cars because you're more involved with it. You know, you feel exactly how much pressure is going to the brakes. There's no power assist of any kind. No power booster on the brakes, no power assisted power steering. You know exactly what the car is doing at all times. Welcome to an episode of Jay Leno's Garage. The car we're featuring today, 1940 Lagonda Le Mans race car. Lagonda is one of those great marks. It's an English company. A lot of people might be surprised to know the man who started the company was American. He was a man named Wilbur Gunn. A little bit of engineering background, also an opera singer, all kinds of things. I don't know how famous he was as an opera singer, but he's good enough to be called a semi-professional. Anyway, I believe he got a divorce and he went to England and he was interested in automobiles. In the early 1900s, started Lagonda Motor Company. They were the first to have an integral bodied car, by that like a monocoque type deal. A lot of people think Lancia was the first. He was actually the first, but I think Lancia gets most of the credit for it. But that being said, this car is famous because the engine was designed by W.O. Bentley. W.O. Bentley, of course, ran Bentley Motors from 1919 to 1931. Won Le Mans a whole bunch of times, built just fabulous cars, the 8-liter Bentleys, the 3-liter Bentleys, the blower Bentley. Although blower Bentleys were not built by W.O. Bentley. He hated supercharging and turbocharging. His solution to make cars durable, just make the engines bigger and make them a little bit stronger. And that worked quite well for him because a blower Bentley really never won anything. But it was sort of a fearsome automobile because it was loud and fast, and racing legend Tim Burton drove one, and you know, but that's another whole story. Anyway, when Bentley went under, Bentley was looking for work. He was a fabulous, genius engineer, not a great businessman. Went to work for Rolls-Royce for a while, and then wound up working for Lagonda. And he developed his V12 engine. This is his, I think, first modern engine. W.O. Bentley was a locomotive engineer, so when you see a lot of his stuff, you see even the way the overhead cam is driven by conrods, kind of like, you know, when you see on a train, the kind of deal like this. Well, yeah, but that's how he ran the overhead valves. This had twin overhead cams, V12. I'll show you this engine a little bit. And he was hired by Lagonda to build a couple of Le Mans cars, and he had 5 months to do it. And he thought that, well, that was impossible. But he did quite well. The cars placed third and fourth their first time out. Remember, he took essentially a road chassis, lightened it up. I believe Frank Feely was the designer, designed this fabulous looking body, went to Le Mans. He instructed his guys not to run any faster than 1 mile an hour faster than last year's winning time, which is something like 82 miles an hour. The cars did quite well. Third and fourth at Le Mans, first time out, is pretty impressive. They only ran the 1 year, 1939. 1940, the war intervened, Hitler was there, and that put an end to all of that. 2 Le Mans race cars were built. I believe both were destroyed during the war. During the bombing of Britain, there was a direct hit on the factory. That one blew up, and I think the other one is gone too. This is what you call a Le Mans replica, but an exact replica. You know, a lot of times replicas have Volkswagen engines or something. This is exactly as it was built by the factory. This is built by my good friend Lagonda Joe Harding. I met Joe when he was a young man. He was just a real engineer type, loved to race, loved Lagondas. I got this, God, almost 30 years ago. And it's just been a wonderful, wonderful car. It's fast. It feels post-war. It's hard to believe this is a pre-war engine because it's quite modern in its power delivery. It's 220 horsepower, which is very impressive for the day. Top speed, well over 100 miles an hour. 4-speed gearbox. We'll go through it in a minute here, but you can see these flowing lines, and the chassis is drilled for lightness. And interesting here on these drum brakes, it's got hydraulic brakes. You see those aluminum discs in there. I thought it would run cooler with the aluminum discs out. It actually runs cooler with the aluminum discs in. I don't quite know why, but they race that way, so that's the way we keep it. And I must admit, I had never had any trouble with the brakes overheating. It's a really comfortable car to drive. It's quite a long wheelbase, so you can stretch out in this thing. But it's really long-legged. It's, you know, in fourth gear, At 100 miles an hour, well, I can't remember what the revs are, but pretty low. It's just a relaxed, fun car to drive. You've got 2 filler caps here, which was sort of standard back in the day for pit stops. You'd have those big cans, and they put 2 of them up here and fill the tank obviously twice as fast. Knock off wheels. This is what aerodynamics looked like in 1939. I don't know what the coefficient of drag would be on it, but I imagine it was certainly better than the standard car body that it came with. Okay, let's take a look under the hood here. Okay, there we go. Let's put this over here. As you can see, 4 carburetors, as they say in England, just a modern engine. Okay, you got 2 rows of cylinders. It's an angle of 60 degrees. The bore and stroke is virtually square at 75 by 84.5 millimeters. This gives you 4,480 cc capacity. It's a 4.5 liter engine. The cylinder blocks, the upper half of the crankcase are cast from nickel alloyed iron. The lower half is kind of a complex aluminum casting with removable rib bottom section there. Now notice each cylinder has an overhead camshaft driven by chains and 4 helical tooth gears. The cast aluminum camshaft has 7 bearings each, and they rotate in aluminum housing. So it's a pretty sophisticated piece of work here. It really looks like something Ferrari would have produced after the war, you know, the twin distributors, the 4 carburetors. It's really just a fabulous car. It doesn't overheat in both racing applications, and it was put in their big sedans and limousines. I mean, it was smooth, it was powerful. It really is a post-war engine done pre-war, really. I think it's pretty advanced. I think this was Bentley's first modern engine, truly modern engine. He built sort of things the old-fashioned way. See, he worked on I think it was the Great Northern Railroad. He was an engineer for them, and I think he died in 1971, W.O. Bentley did. So although his car company was not a financial success, I think he died knowing it was a huge enthusiast automobile. The Bentley Club had been going for years by then, and he was featured speaker. And so I think he didn't become a rich man, but I think he certainly was rich in friends and respect and all those kind of things that really count. So, but I think this was his ideal motor. He designed all kinds of motors, but this I think was his coup de grace. And it was reliable. The fact that the whole car was built in 5 months and came in 3rd and 4th is pretty amazing, I think. Notice this beautiful fan. Here we go. The K&N filters, okay, those aren't original. Apparently the air was much cleaner back in 1939 because they ran without air cleaners, but I like to keep them on here. But you know, I've driven this car for 30 years. Joe did such a beautiful job on it, nicely balanced, just a wonderful, wonderful driving car. I've got another one in the back that I bought. I bought it up at Monterey back in the 80s. It kind of been slapped together. It still had the V12 engine, but it wasn't built as nice as this one. Somebody had put the wheels on the wrong side, which meant every time you hit the brakes, you were loosening the wheels because you're doing this. You understand, they were threaded opposite. So I'm on the 405 freeway and I hit the brakes and boom, that wheel falls off. Boom, that wheel falls off. I had to chase him down, like walk half a mile to get my wheel. Luckily, as you can see, the brake drums are so huge. When the car went down with the wheel off, it didn't really fall more than maybe 4 or 5 inches, so it wasn't like I was just because the drums are so huge, I kind of rolled on those for a little while. Anyway, that one's parked in the back, and I'm going to get to that one someday. But this one has just been a joy. Joe did a wonderful, wonderful job. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, let's go over the gauges. All right, you got your speedometer here on the far side, a fan, electric pumps. You know, a lot of times with old cars, you put modern electric fuel pumps in them because they're just more reliable than mechanical pumps. But this came with electric pumps, so they're still on there. You can run them individually, turn them on and off. The starter switch is right here, electric fan. You've got oil temperature, oil pressure, water temperature. ammeter, and of course your tachometer right here. At Le Mans, you were required to carry a spare tire, and if you got a flat, the driver had to change it himself. You couldn't get help from the pits. We'll show you that in a minute. Well, take a look now. Here's the spare tire, how it's right under there. I'm going to start this thing up for you. First, we turn the key. Make sure she's in neutral. I did this once. I hit the button. Hey, it dragged me across the shop before I could turn it off. So here we go. Hit the starter. Docile as can be. Just a wonderful motor. It's very cold now, so yes. Fantastic. Fantastic. No smoke, runs great. Let's put the hood back on it, and we'll take it for a spin and show you what it can do. All right, let's pull out of here. Well, I could see racing this car for 24 hours. It's comfortable, you got plenty of room. Let's get some heat in it first. Engines in the late 30s. You had Victoriano with the 2.9 Alpha with the 2 superchargers. That's a great one. Of course, Maserati, everybody else. I just feel this is an overlooked car. This engine has been pretty bulletproof. I've been driving it for 30 years. All I do is change the oil. It's fast. It handles. Has a glorious sound. Just wonderful car to drive. I love this era of racing car when you could drive a car to the race, enter the race, win the race, and then drive it home. I think the last car to do that was probably the F1 McLaren, because that was a road car converted into a race car. They actually detuned it at the time. But the idea here was you took a standard car and you modified it, and you won the race. I love this thing because I can drive it like a modern car. I can go hundreds and hundreds of miles without any fear of it's going to overheat or break down or whatever. It just keeps running. It's nicely geared, so at 70 you turn in what, maybe 3,500 RPM, something like that. Red line is about 5,500. If this had the name Ferrari or Porsche written on it, it would be worth 10 times as much. California is the perfect place for a car like this, boy. It's about 50-something degrees today, a little on the cool side. But you get just enough engine heat to keep you warm. WO Bentley really built cars to be durable and last. You know, I love my Bugattis, but they're a bit spindly, you know. Bentley always made proper automobiles that could take a beat. On a day like today, you can drive right up to the snow line here in California, like 35, 40 minutes from my garage. The road's closed because there's snow, and it's 70 degrees down here. It's so relaxing to drive that it's deceptively quick, you know? I'll be going along going, oh geez, I'm doing 90. This short windscreen is quite effective. You don't get anything in your eyes. All the wind kind of blows over the top. You know, LA has the worst get 5 miles out of LA, and then you have this. Not another car on the road. When you think about Ferrari's first V12s, they're all like 1.5, 2 liter. This is 4.5 liter. Big motor, big power, big torque. Just fantastic. I love a big steering wheel. Hard to believe the worst traffic in the world is 6 miles that way. So I love about California. The only reason to use these roads is for driving fun. You know, if you need to get somewhere, the highway will take you around the mountains. But there's hundreds of miles of roads through these mountains. It's just terrific. In a lot of ways, vintage motoring is more fun than supercars because you're more involved with it. You know, you feel exactly how much pressure is going into the brakes. There's no power assist of any kind. No power booster on the brakes. No power assisted power steering. You know exactly what the car is doing at all times. I love this era of motoring when every car had the engineer's fingerprints on it, you know? Duesenberg built a particular kind of car. Bentley built a particular kind of car. Frederick Lanchester built a particular kind of car, you know? And I also love that era when each cars had the traits of their nation, you know? German cars are very meticulous and precision. Italian cars are kind of wild and kind of full-blooded looking, you know? English cars were somewhat restrained, had a lot of quiet power. I love it when the car represents the characteristics of the nation that they're from. You know, this car is proof if you take care of your automobile, you can drive the thing for 30 years. Fun thing about a lot of these old cars, you slow down by using the transmission more than the brakes, because brakes didn't last too long. I've still got the original pads on this thing as when I got it, because I use the transmission a lot to slow down. I'm not jumping on the brakes hard. That being said, it can do the job if called upon. It's the perfect day in California. Enough heat coming off the engine to keep your toes warm and your face is in a cool breeze. Think how advanced this car was back in, you know, even Cadillac had gone back to the flathead for their V12s and V16s. Lincoln was a flathead. Not a lot of twin cam, not a lot of, you know, overhead cam V12 engines around. The interesting thing is they didn't have to be this good, but that's just the way Bentley built them. You know, a lot of you might have seen this car racing in the 80s and early 90s up in Monterey, Laguna Seca. It was on the track there quite a bit. Joe did a terrific job. As you probably know, Lagonda is still around to this day. It was acquired by Aston Martin. And they've done a pretty good stewardship with it. It's a great name, and they did some wonderful cars in the first part of the last century. And this is probably, I think, the best they ever did. Well, I hope I didn't go on too much about how much I love this car, but you know, it really is amazing. It's reliable, dependable, it handles, it's fast, it's fun to drive, it's good looking. It's really almost a perfect vintage car. Well, thanks once again for checking out the website. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of English history, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks a lot.